The rattling sound of a rifle being cocked echoed through the dusty streets of Keeler, Wyoming Territory. As Sophia Fletcher found herself staring down the barrel, her heart pounding wildly against her ribcage. Sheriff Walter Blackburn's weathered face twisted with contempt as he leveled the weapon at her. "You've got until sundown to clear out of my town," he spat, tobacco juice staining his grizzled beard. "We don't need your kind here." The year was 1876, and Sophia had traveled over 2,000 miles from Boston with nothing but a trunk of belongings and dreams of a new beginning after her father's death had left her penniless and alone. The small frontier town had seemed like the perfect place to establish her medical practice until now. "My kind," she echoed, her voice steadier than she felt. "You mean a trained physician?" "I mean a woman playing at being a doctor," Blackburn sneered. "Filling people's heads with nonsense about germs and hand washing. Last thing we need is some Eastern female stirring up trouble." The sound of spurs jingling against wooden planks drew both their attention. Deputy Sheriff Samuel Porter stood at the corner of the boardwalk, his lean frame silhouetted against the afternoon sun. His hand rested casually on his holster, but his eyes, sharp as a hawk's, were deadly serious. "Lower that weapon, Sheriff," Samuel said, his voice quiet but carrying the weight of steel. "Miss Fletcher stays in Keeler under my protection." The tension between the two men was palpable, stretching across the dirt street like a live wire. Sophia held her breath, caught between terror and an inexplicable feeling of safety emanating from the deputy she'd only exchanged a handful of words with since her arrival 2 weeks prior. Sheriff Blackburn's eyes narrowed to slits. "You forgetting who wears the badge of authority in this town, Porter?" "Not at all," Samuel replied, taking measured steps toward them. "I'm just reminding you of the law you're sworn to uphold. Last I checked, threatening innocent citizens wasn't part of it." Blackburn lowered his rifle reluctantly, his face darkening. "This isn't over," he warned, eyes flicking between Sophia and Samuel, "not by a long shot." He spat in the dust at Sophia's feet before stalking away, shoulders rigid with anger. Only when the sheriff disappeared into the saloon did Sophia release the breath she'd been holding. Her knees felt weak, and she gripped the post of the general store's porch to steady herself. "You all right, Miss Fletcher?" Samuel asked, closing the distance between them. Up close, his features were a striking combination of rugged and refined high cheekbones weathered by sun and wind, eyes the color of a summer storm. "Yes, thank you, Deputy Porter," she managed, attempting to regain her composure, "though I fear you've made an enemy on my account." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Blackburn and I have never seen eye to eye on much. This just gives him another reason to dislike me." He glanced down the street, his expression turning serious, but he wasn't making idle threats. "He wants you gone." "I've nowhere else to go," Sophia admitted, the reality of her situation hitting her anew. "And these people need medical care. Their nearest doctor is in Laramie, 2 days' ride away." Samuel studied her for a long moment. "You really are a doctor, then?" "I trained at the Women's Medical College of Pennsylvania," she said, lifting her chin. "I've delivered babies, set broken bones, and treated every illness from measles to typhoid. Being a woman doesn't make my knowledge any less valuable." Something shifted in his expression, respect, perhaps, or admiration. "No, madam, I don't suppose it does." He adjusted his hat, shielding his eyes from the lowering sun. "But Blackburn's got influence in this town, and he's not alone in his thinking. There are those who believe women should stick to cooking and child-rearing." "And what do you believe, Deputy Porter?" Sophia found herself asking. His eyes met hers directly. "I believe in giving folks a fair chance to prove themselves, and I believe this town could use some healing." Before Sophia could respond, a commotion erupted from down the street. A woman's panicked cries cut through the afternoon quiet. "Help! Somebody help! It's my boy!" Without hesitation, Sophia grabbed her medical bag from the porch where she dropped it during the confrontation. Samuel fell into step beside her as they rushed toward the source of the cries. Martha Coleman stood in front of the blacksmith shop, cradling her 10-year-old son Tommy, whose face had gone ashen. Blood soaked through his shirt sleeve. "What happened?" Sophia asked, immediately kneeling beside them. "Metal shard," the blacksmith, Joe Calloway, explained grimly. Flew off when I was hammering, cut him deep. Sophia gently examined the wound, which was indeed deep and jagged. He needs stitches immediately. And the wound must be cleaned properly to prevent infection. Martha looked uncertain, glancing between Sophia and Samuel. Sheriff Blackburn says, Mrs. Coleman, Samuel interrupted firmly, your boy needs medical attention now. Miss Fletcher is a trained doctor. Martha hesitated only a moment longer before nodding. My house is just there, she said, pointing to a small cabin across the street. Within minutes, Sophia had Tommy laid out on the kitchen table. She worked efficiently, cleaning the wound with alcohol, which made the boy wince despite his brave attempt not to cry. You're doing splendidly, Sophia encouraged as she threaded her needle. Just a few stitches and you'll have quite the story to tell your friends. Samuel stood at the doorway, keeping watch while occasionally glancing over at Sophia's work. Her hands moved with practiced precision, and she spoke softly to Tommy, explaining each step to distract him from the pain. This might hurt a bit, she warned as she began the first stitch. But I need you to hold very still. Tommy bit his lip and nodded, his eyes fixed on the ceiling. Martha held his other hand, her face tight with worry. 14 neat stitches later, Sophia was bandaging the wound. Keep it clean and dry. I'll come back tomorrow to check it and change the dressing. Relief washed over Martha's face. Thank you, doctor. I don't know what we would have done if the door burst open and Sheriff Blackburn filled the frame, his face thunderous. What in tarnation is going on here? Tommy flinched, and Sophia instinctively moved between the sheriff and her patient. I've just finished treating a serious laceration, she said evenly. Tommy will need to rest. I told you to get out of my town, Blackburn growled. And I told you she stays under my protection. Samuel stepped forward, hand on his holster. The boy needed help. Would you rather he'd bled out while waiting for a doctor from Laramie? Martha Coleman straightened her spine, finding courage in the standoff. Sheriff, she saved my Tommy. Dr. Fletcher knew exactly what to do. The title doctor seemed to infuriate Blackburn further. She ain't no doctor in these parts until I say so, and I say she's nothing but trouble. The town council might have something to say about that, a new voice interjected. Harold Jenkins, the owner of the general store and head of the town council, stood in the doorway behind Blackburn. Martha sent her youngest to fetch me, said we had ourselves a medical emergency and a miracle worker all in one. Jenkins stepped around the sheriff, inspecting Tommy's bandaged arm with obvious approval. Clean work, Miss Fletcher, very professional. That's Dr. Fletcher, Samuel corrected quietly. Jenkins nodded. Dr. Fletcher, then. Seems to me Keeler's been needing a physician for some time now. We lost 3 good men last winter to infections that might have been treated, and Mrs. Parker's daughter in childbirth. This is absurd, Blackburn protested. You can't seriously be considering letting a woman. I'm considering the welfare of this town, Jenkins cut him off firmly. And I believe the council will agree that medical care is sorely needed here. He turned to Sophia. If you're planning to stay, doctor, I've got an empty storefront next to the general store, could be converted to a proper doctor's office. Hope surged through Sophia. I would be honored, Mr. Jenkins. Blackburn's face mottled with rage. This isn't over, he warned for the second time that day before storming out. Jenkins sighed heavily. I'm afraid he's right about that. Walter Blackburn has been sheriff here for 15 years. He's got friends in high places. And enemies in low ones, Samuel added grimly. Dr. Fletcher will need watching over until Blackburn either comes around or gives up. Then it's fortunate she has you for a deputy, Jenkins said with a knowing look between them. As the sun set over Keeler that evening, Sophia sat on the small porch of the boarding house where she'd taken a room, contemplating the day's events. The town was quiet now, lamps glowing in windows, a dog barking in the distance. Despite Blackburn's threats, she felt a cautious optimism taking root. The creak of the porch step announced Samuel's arrival before she saw him. He carried 2 cups of coffee and offered one to her wordlessly. Thank you, she said, welcoming the warmth between her palms. The spring night still carried winter's chill. For the coffee and for everything else today. Samuel settled on the step below hers, stretching his long legs out into the yard. You proved yourself to a lot of folks today, Doc. Tommy Coleman's arm would have been a mess if Joe Calloway had tried to stitch it himself. It's what I was trained to do, she said simply. Then, after a pause, may I ask why you stood up for me? You didn't know me or my abilities before today. Samuel took a long sip of his coffee before answering. My mother died of childbed fever when I was 8. The nearest doctor was 3 days' ride away. His eyes held a distant pain. There was a woman in the next town over who knew about medicine, but the menfolk wouldn't fetch her because they said it wasn't proper for a woman to tend to such matters. Sophia's heart ached for the boy he'd been. I'm sorry. He shrugged, but the casualness of the gesture was belied by the tightness around his eyes. It was a long time ago, but I learned then that pride and prejudice can kill as surely as any disease. When I saw Blackburn threatening you today, it struck me as the same kind of foolishness. They sat in companionable silence for a while, sipping coffee and watching the stars emerge in the vast Wyoming sky. Blackburn won't give up easily, Samuel finally said. He's used to getting his way in Keeler. Why does he want me gone so badly? Sophia asked. It seems more than just objection to a woman practicing medicine. Samuel's expression darkened. I have my suspicions. The sheriff has arrangements with certain businesses in town, the saloon for one. The medicine wagon that comes through every month selling colored water and whiskey as miracle cures. A real doctor might cut into those profits. Corruption, Sophia murmured. I've seen it before. Be careful, Samuel warned. Blackburn's dangerous when crossed. And yet you crossed him today. He smiled then, a genuine smile that transformed his face and made Sophia's heart skip inexplicably. I've been crossing Walter Blackburn since the day the mayor pinned this badge on me 3 years ago. He's used to it from me. Well, I'm grateful nonetheless, Sophia said, suddenly aware of how close they were sitting, of the way the lamplight from inside the boarding house cast golden highlights in his brown hair. Samuel stood, taking her empty cup. I'll be keeping an eye on your boarding house tonight, just in case Blackburn gets any ideas. Tomorrow I'll help you set up that office Jenkins offered. You don't have to, I want to, he said simply. Good night, Doc. As he walked away into the darkness, Sophia wrapped her arms around herself, feeling both more vulnerable and more protected than she had in a very long time. The following days passed in a flurry of activity. True to his word, Samuel helped Sophia convert the empty storefront into a doctor's office. They scrubbed floors, painted walls, and built shelving. Harold Jenkins contributed a sturdy oak desk, and other townspeople, curious about the female doctor who had stood up to Sheriff Blackburn, stopped by with offerings curtains, a rocking chair, even a handmade sign that read Dr. S. Fletcher, physician. Word of Tommy Coleman's expertly stitched arm spread quickly. By the end of her first official day, Sophia had treated an arthritic knee, a persistent cough, and delivered the widow Peterson's baby girl a difficult breech birth that would likely have ended in tragedy without her training. Each success earned her more acceptance in Keeler, but also deepened Sheriff Blackburn's resentment. He made his displeasure known in small, petty ways, spreading rumors that her medicines were dangerous, issuing fines for imaginary violations of town ordinances, having his deputies stop patients on their way to her office. Samuel countered each move, sometimes overtly, sometimes through quiet words with the townspeople. The battle lines were clearly drawn, with the town increasingly caught in the middle. One evening, as Sophia was closing up her office, she heard raised voices from the saloon across the street. Through the window, she could see Samuel and Sheriff Blackburn engaged in a heated argument, their faces inches apart. Before she could decide whether to intervene, Samuel turned abruptly and stormed out, nearly colliding with her on the boardwalk. Samuel, what happened? She asked, alarmed at the fury in his normally composed features. He took a deep breath, visibly trying to calm himself. Nothing worth repeating. Then, noticing her expression, he added more gently, Blackburn's been drinking, said some things he shouldn't have. About me, she guessed. Samuel's jaw tightened. Let's just say he doesn't approve of how much time I spend ensuring your safety. I don't want to cause problems between you, and you're not the cause of the problems, Sophia, he interrupted, using her given name for the first time. The sound of it in his deep voice sent an unexpected warmth through her. Blackburn and his ways are the problem. This town deserves better. The door of the saloon banged open and Blackburn emerged, swaying slightly. "Porter," he called, "we ain't finished." Samuel positioned himself slightly in front of Sophia. "Go home and sleep it off, Sheriff. We can talk tomorrow when you're sober." "Don't you tell me what to do, boy," Blackburn snarled, stumbling forward. His hand hovered near his holster. "I run this town." "Not you, and certainly not some woman playing doctor." People were gathering now, drawn by the commotion. Sophia noticed Martha Coleman among them, along with Harold Jenkins and several others she'd treated in recent days. "You don't run anything, Walter," Jenkins said, stepping forward. "You enforce the law when it suits you, but the town council makes the decisions around here." Blackburn spat on the ground. "That council appointed me sheriff 15 years ago because you needed someone who could keep order. Someone who understood that certain elements don't belong in a decent town." His bloodshot eyes fixed on Sophia. "Like women who don't know their place, or sheriffs who don't know theirs," Samuel suggested quietly. A dangerous silence fell. Everyone present could feel the precipice they stood upon, a moment that could change the course of Keeler's future. It was Martha Coleman who broke the tension, stepping up beside Sophia. "Dr. Fletcher saved my boy's arm, maybe his life. Since when is healing not a woman's place?" "I'd say it suits her better than most." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. One by one, others stepped forward with their own testimonials. Mr. Peterson, whose wife and newborn daughter both lived thanks to Sophia's skill. Old Jim Barker, whose cough of 20 years had finally improved under her care. Young Lucy Wilson, whose badly broken leg was healing straight and true. Blackburn looked around incredulously as the tide of public opinion visibly turned against him. "You're all fools," he growled. "She's bewitched you somehow." "The only fool here is you, Walter," Jenkins said firmly, "and I think it's time we discussed your position in this town." Blackburn's hand dropped to his gun, but Samuel was faster, drawing his revolver in one fluid motion. "Don't," he warned. "You're drunk and outnumbered. Walk away now and we can sort this out properly tomorrow." For a tense moment, it seemed Blackburn might draw anyway. Then, with a final venomous glance at Sophia, he backed down. "This ain't over," he muttered his familiar refrain before stumbling back toward the sheriff's office. The crowd dispersed slowly, many stopping to offer Sophia words of support and encouragement. When finally only she and Samuel remained on the darkening street, she felt both exhilarated and exhausted by the confrontation. "You've won them over," Samuel observed, holstering his weapon. "In less than 2 weeks, you've become indispensable to Keeler." "Not everyone feels that way," she reminded him, glancing in the direction Blackburn had gone. "No," Samuel agreed grimly, "and that makes him more dangerous than ever." He offered his arm. "Let me walk you back to the boarding house. It's getting dark." As they strolled through the quiet streets, Sophia found herself acutely aware of Samuel's solid presence beside her, the warmth of his arm beneath her hand. They had worked closely together over the past 2 weeks, developing a comfortable rhythm and easy conversation. But there were moments like now when something more seemed to simmer beneath the surface, unspoken yet unmistakable. "Thank you," she said softly as they reached the boarding house. "Not just for the escort, but for everything. I wouldn't have survived in Keeler without your support." In the fading light, his eyes seemed to darken as they met hers. "You're stronger than you give yourself credit for, Sophia." The way he said her name made her breath catch. They stood for a long moment on the porch, the air between them charged with possibility. Samuel broke the spell first, taking a small step back. "I should let you rest. Tomorrow might bring its own challenges." Sophia nodded, feeling both disappointed and relieved. Whatever was growing between them was complicated enough without the added threat of Blackburn's enmity. "Good night, Samuel. Lock your door," he reminded her, backing down the steps. "I'll be nearby." True to his word, Samuel kept watch over the boarding house until dawn broke over the eastern plains, bringing with it a day that would change everything in Keeler. Sophia was awakened by urgent knocking at her door. The landlady, Mrs. Holloway, stood outside in her nightdress, face pale with worry. "Dr. Fletcher, you must come quickly. There's been shooting at the sheriff's office." Heart pounding, Sophia dressed hastily and grabbed her medical bag. The streets were already filled with townsfolk hurrying toward the center of town, where a crowd had gathered outside the small jailhouse that served as the sheriff's office. Samuel stood on the steps, his expression grave. When he saw Sophia pushing through the crowd, he came immediately to her side. "What's happened?" she asked, dread pooling in her stomach. "Blackburn's dead," he said quietly, guiding her away from the curious onlookers. "Shot through the window of the office sometime in the early morning hours." Shock rendered Sophia momentarily speechless. Despite their conflicts, she had never wished harm on the sheriff. "Who, nobody knows yet," Samuel cut in. "But it doesn't look good, Sophia." His deputy found a note on the desk, a threat written to Blackburn about what happens to men who stand against progress in Keeler. The implication hit her like a physical blow. "They'll think I was involved." Samuel's expression confirmed her fears. "There are already whispers." "Blackburn had many friends, despite his flaws. They'll want someone to blame." "But I was at the boarding house all night. Mrs. Holloway will confirm. I believe you," Samuel assured her, placing a steadying hand on her arm. "But we need more than the word of a landlady who could have slept through you leaving. We need to find the real killer before suspicion falls too heavily on you." Mayor Wilson appeared, his round face somber as he approached them. "Deputy Porter, a word." Samuel squeezed Sophia's hand briefly before stepping aside with the mayor. Their conversation was low and intense, with occasional glances in Sophia's direction. When Samuel returned, his expression was troubled. "The mayor wants to appoint me acting sheriff until this is sorted out," he explained. "And he's asked that you limit your practice temporarily until we can clear your name of any involvement." "That's absurd," Sophia protested. "People need medical care regardless of what's happened." Samuel ran a hand through his hair, clearly frustrated. "I know, but tensions are high. Blackburn's closest friends are already talking about taking matters into their own hands if justice isn't served quickly." "And justice means finding someone to blame," Sophia concluded bitterly. "Preferably the outsider who had the most obvious conflict with him." "I won't let that happen," Samuel vowed, "but I need you to trust me. Stay close to your office or the boarding house. Don't go anywhere alone. I'll find whoever did this." For the next 3 days, Keeler simmered with tension. Samuel was sworn in as acting sheriff, giving him authority to investigate Blackburn's murder properly. Despite the mayor's request, Sophia continued to see patients, though many now came surreptitiously, after dark or through the back door of her office. Rumors spread like wildfire through the small town. Some said Blackburn had been killed by outlaws he'd crossed years ago. Others whispered about gambling debts or a woman in the next town over. But the most persistent rumor, fueled by Blackburn's closest cronies, was that the female doctor had somehow orchestrated his death to secure her position in Keeler. On the evening of the 3rd day, as Sophia was organizing her supplies after treating a ranch hand's dislocated shoulder, the back door of her office opened quietly. She turned, expecting Samuel, who had taken to checking on her regularly. Instead, she found herself facing Deputy Frank Miller, Blackburn's right-hand man and most loyal supporter. His face was hard with barely contained anger. "Evening, Doctor," he said, the title twisted into a sneer. "Thought we might have a private chat." Sophia maintained her composure with effort. "Of course, Deputy, what can I help you with?" Miller closed the door behind him, the click of the latch sounding ominously final. "I think you know why I'm here. Walter was my friend for 20 years. He knew you were trouble the moment you stepped foot in Keeler." "I'm sorry for your loss," Sophia said carefully, moving behind her desk to put something solid between them. "But I had nothing to do with Sheriff Blackburn's death." Miller's laugh was cold and humorless. "That note we found was mighty convenient. Those who stand against progress will fall. Sounds just like something an educated Eastern lady might say." "I would never save it," Miller interrupted. "I know Porter's sweet on you. That's why he's not looking too hard for the real killer. But some of us aren't so easily fooled by a pretty face." He moved closer, and Sophia tensed, searching for an escape route. The front door was locked and Miller blocked the back. Her only weapon was a letter opener on the desk, woefully inadequate against the deputy's revolver. "What do you want?" she asked, striving to keep her voice steady. "Justice," Miller said simply. "And since Porter won't provide it, me and some of the boys have decided to take matters into our own hands." A chill ran down Sophia's spine. "Are you threatening me, deputy?" "No, madam, I'm promising you." His hand dropped to his holster. "You've got two choices. Leave Keeler tonight, never to return, or face a rope for murder." "That would be murder itself," she countered. "I'm innocent," Miller shrugged. "Won't matter much to you either way once you're swinging." The sound of the front door handle turning made them both freeze. "Sophia," Samuel's voice called. "Why is the door locked?" Relief flooded through her. "Samuel, in here." Miller moved with unexpected speed, grabbing Sophia and pressing his revolver to her temple before Samuel could break through the door. When he finally shouldered it open, he stopped short at the scene before him. "Let her go, Frank," Samuel said, his voice dangerously quiet. His own gun was already drawn. "This isn't your business anymore, Porter," Miller spat. "You had your chance to bring Walter's killer to justice. Now we're doing it our way." "Our way," Samuel echoed. "Who's we?" As if in answer, the back door opened again, revealing 3 more men, all known associates of Blackburn's. Each was armed, expressions grim with purpose. "You're outnumbered, Porter," Miller said. "Be smart and walk away. This woman killed Walter and she's going to pay." Samuel didn't lower his weapon. "She was with me that night, Frank." A moment of confusion crossed Miller's face. "What?" "After I walked her to the boarding house, I went back to her. We were together until nearly dawn." Samuel's eyes met Sophia's, silently urging her to play along. "She couldn't have shot Blackburn because she was with me." The lie hung in the air, bold and dangerous. Sophia knew that if discovered, it would ruin both of them, her reputation as a respectable doctor, his as an honorable lawman. Miller's grip tightened painfully on her arm. "You expect us to believe that? Everyone knows Porter's been sweet on her since she arrived." "Which is precisely why I didn't announce it to the town," Samuel replied evenly. "But I won't let an innocent woman hang to preserve my reputation. Sophia could not have killed Blackburn." One of the other men shifted uncomfortably. "If that's true, Frank, he's lying to protect her," Miller insisted. "Just like he's been doing since she got here." "I can prove it," Samuel said. "Sophia has a birthmark on her left shoulder, a perfect circle like a small moon." Only someone who had seen her undressed would know that. Heat rushed to Sophia's face, both at the intimate knowledge Samuel claimed and at the bold falsehood, for she had no such birthmark, and they both knew it. It was a gamble that could be easily disproven. Yet the confidence in Samuel's voice created just enough doubt in Miller's followers. They exchanged uncertain glances. "Check if you don't believe me," Samuel challenged, his gaze never wavering. "But understand that if you harm her, you'll have to go through me first." The standoff stretched for what felt like an eternity. Finally, the oldest of the men put a hand on Miller's shoulder. "Let her go, Frank. This ain't right, and you know it." "Walter is dead," Miller protested. "Someone has to pay." "Not someone," Samuel corrected firmly. "The right someone." "I've been investigating while you've been planning vigilante justice. There are leads pointing to Roger Sloan over at the saloon. Seems Blackburn was squeezing him for more protection money than he could afford." This new information rippled through the group. Sloan's financial troubles were common knowledge, as was Blackburn's arrangement with certain businesses. Miller's resolve visibly wavered. Slowly, he lowered his gun and released Sophia, who immediately moved to Samuel's side. "If you're lying about Sloan," Miller began. "I'm not," Samuel cut him off. "And if you interfere with my investigation again, I'll have all of you in jail cells. Now get out." After a tense moment, the men filed out, Miller last of all, his parting glare promising that this wasn't over. When they were finally alone, Sophia sagged against the desk, relief making her knees weak. "Thank you," she whispered. "That was quick thinking." Samuel holstered his weapon, his movements deliberately controlled. "I should have anticipated this. Miller's been volatile since Blackburn's death." "Is it true about Sloan?" He nodded grimly. "I found evidence this morning. A witness saw Sloan leaving the sheriff's office around the time of the shooting, and we found the murder weapon hidden in the saloon's storeroom." "So it's over?" Sophia asked hopefully. "Not yet," Samuel cautioned. Miller and his friends won't be convinced until Sloane confesses or stands trial, and there's still the matter of our alibi. Sophia felt heat rise to her cheeks again. Yes, about that birthmark I apparently have. The ghost of a smile touched his lips. I apologize for the impropriety. It seemed the most effective way to create doubt. It was, she acknowledged, though now half the town will think we're involved. Would that be so terrible? The question was soft, almost hesitant, so unlike Samuel's usual confidence that Sophia looked at him in surprise. I meant, he clarified quickly, your reputation as a doctor. I know what you meant, Sophia interrupted gently. Something had shifted between them in that moment of crisis, a truth revealed in the lengths Samuel was willing to go to protect her. And no, it wouldn't be terrible at all. Their eyes met in shared understanding. There would be time later to explore what lay between them, but for now they had a murderer to bring to justice and a town to set right. The next morning, Samuel arrested Roger Sloane for the murder of Sheriff Blackburn. Under questioning, Sloane confessed that the sheriff had been extorting increasingly impossible sums from the saloon's profits, threatening to shut him down if he didn't pay. The planted note about progress had been an attempt to divert suspicion. The truth cleared Sophia's name, though whispers about her relationship with the new sheriff continued to circulate. Some found it scandalous, others romantic, but as the weeks passed, most came to accept it as simply another fact of life in Keeler. Samuel was officially appointed sheriff after a unanimous vote by the town council. His first act was to hire 2 new deputies, honest men with no ties to Blackburn's corrupt practices. His second was to formally recognize Sophia Fletcher, M.D., as the town physician, complete with a signed certificate that hung proudly in her office window. As spring melted into summer, Keeler blossomed under its new leadership. The town expanded, attracting families seeking the security of a well-run community with medical care. Sophia's practice thrived, her reputation extending even to neighboring settlements that occasionally sent for her in difficult cases. And in the quiet evenings, when her work was done and his rounds completed, Samuel would often escort her on walks along the creek that ran behind the town, their conversations ranging from books to medicine to dreams of the future. It was on one such evening, with fireflies dancing above the water and the distant sound of a piano drifting from the saloon, that Samuel finally spoke the words that had been building between them for months. I love you, Sophia, he said simply, stopping to face her on the narrow path. I think I have since that first day when you stood up to Blackburn with more courage than most men I know. Sophia's heart swelled with a happiness so intense it was almost painful. I love you too, she replied, the words feeling both momentous and entirely natural. Even when you're being insufferably protective, he laughed, drawing her closer. Someone has to look after the doctor who looks after everyone else. Their first kiss was gentle, a tentative exploration that quickly deepened into something more urgent. When they finally parted, breathless and smiling, the world seemed somehow brighter, more vivid in its details. Marry me, Samuel said, the words more declaration than question. Be my wife, my partner in everything. Yes, Sophia answered without hesitation. Though the town might talk about the scandal of their sheriff marrying their doctor. Let them talk, he murmured against her hair. We've faced worse together. They were married on a perfect autumn day with the aspen trees turning gold against the blue Wyoming sky. Harold Jenkins gave the bride away, and Martha Coleman's son Tommy, his arm bearing a neat scar from Sophia's stitches, proudly served as ring bearer. The entire town turned out for the celebration, even Frank Miller, who had gradually come to accept both Sophia's innocence and her place in Keeler. The newlyweds received gifts ranging from practical household items to a beautiful handcrafted sign for their new home. Sheriff and Dr. Porter. Their home became the heart of Keeler, a place where justice and healing coexisted, where both the law-abiding and the troubled could find help. Sophia continued her medical practice, eventually training a young woman from the nearby Shoshone tribe who showed remarkable aptitude for medicine, ensuring that Keeler would never again be without proper care. Samuel's reputation as a fair but firm sheriff spread throughout the territory, bringing both respect and occasional challenges. There were hard times, outlaws who tested his resolve, epidemics that pushed Sophia to her limits, but they faced each trial together, their bond only strengthening with each obstacle overcome. 2 years after their wedding, their family expanded with the birth of their son, William Harold Porter, named for Sophia's father and the man who had helped secure her place in Keeler. Will, as they called him, grew into a curious, adventurous boy with his mother's compassion and his father's steady resolve. He was joined 3 years later by twin girls, Elizabeth and Margaret, whose arrival during a blizzard became yet another legend in Keeler. How Sheriff Porter had delivered his own daughters under Dr. Porter's calm instruction when the snowdrifts made reaching their home impossible for anyone else. As their children grew, so did Keeler. The railroad finally reached them in 1885, bringing new opportunities and challenges. Sophia established a small hospital with the help of a generous donation from Harold Jenkins's estate after his peaceful passing. Samuel was offered a position as U.S. Marshal, a promotion he declined, preferring to remain in the community they had helped build. On warm summer evenings, the Porter family often sat on their wide front porch, watching their children play in the yard while neighbors stopped to chat. Sometimes Samuel would take Sophia's hand, his thumb brushing over the simple gold band he had placed there years before, and they would exchange a look that needed no words, a recognition of how far they had come from that first confrontation on a dusty street. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked her once, as they watched 10-year-old Will teaching his 7-year-old sisters to lasso a fence post. Coming to Keeler, facing Blackburn, all of it. Sophia considered the question, her gaze taking in their home, their children, the town spread out before them with its mix of old and new buildings, its diverse residents going about their evening activities. "Not for a moment," she answered truthfully. "Everything that happened led us here, to this life we've built together." She squeezed his hand. "Though I must say your protection has proven quite valuable over the years, Deputy." Samuel laughed and pulled her close. "That's sheriff to you, Doctor." "Always," she agreed, leaning into his embrace as the Wyoming sunset painted the sky in hues of gold and pink, a fitting backdrop to the life they had fought for and won together in the wild heart of the West. In the autumn of 1896, 20 years after Sophia first arrived in Keeler, the town held a celebration in honor of their beloved doctor and sheriff. The main street was decorated with bunting and flowers, tables laden with food stretched from the general store, now run by Jenkins's son, to the schoolhouse, built 10 years prior at Sophia's insistence. William Porter, now a strapping young man of 18 preparing to attend medical school in Denver, stood proudly beside his sisters as the mayor presented their parents with a commemorative plaque for the town hall. Elizabeth and Margaret, 16 and already showing signs of their parents' determination, Elizabeth with her interest in law, Margaret in teaching, exchanged delighted glances as testimonials were shared about the couple who had transformed a rough frontier settlement into a thriving community. As night fell and lanterns were lit for dancing, Samuel led Sophia away from the festivities to the creek where he had proposed so many years ago. The path was wider now, properly maintained as part of the town's park, but the sound of the water and the scent of wild sage remained unchanged. 20 years, Sophia marveled, her hand comfortably tucked in the crook of his arm. A few strands of silver now gleamed in her dark hair, matching the distinguished gray at Samuel's temples. "Sometimes it feels like yesterday that I stepped off that stagecoach." "And sometimes it feels like you've always been here," Samuel replied, pulling her close. "Like Keeler was just waiting for you to arrive and bring it to life." She smiled up at him, her heart as full as it had been on their wedding day. "We did that together, you know. You gave me the chance to prove myself when it would have been easier to side with Blackburn. Best decision I ever made," he said softly, brushing a kiss against her temple. "Though I still maintain that my protection was absolutely necessary." Sophia laughed, the sound mingling with the gurgle of the creek and the distant music from town. And I still maintain that you were insufferably overprotective, but I loved you for it anyway." As they stood together in the gathering dusk, their journey from adversaries to allies to beloved partners seemed both remarkable and inevitable, a story that had shaped not only their lives, but the very fabric of the community around them. The town that had once nearly driven Sophia away now celebrated her as its heart, just as Samuel, who had once been merely her protector, had become the center of her world. Together they had built something that would outlast them both, a legacy of healing, justice, and love that would echo through Keeler for generations to come. And as they walked back toward the lights and music of the celebration, hand in hand as always, they knew with absolute certainty that however many years lay ahead, they would face them together, the doctor and her deputy, whose promise of protection had grown into a lifetime of love.